For most people, the act of venting out their frustration is a normal part of their life. However, to prevent things from going out of hand, the limits of venting are kept in check by these things called as the laws. And so, for the longest periods of time, people have tried to keep themselves in check to avoid being sentenced to prison. The only exception, of course, being dictators, serial killers, and a driver of a film star. And speaking of films, writers have always toyed with the concept of lawlessness, always wondering as to what would happen if people were free to commit crimes. It's led to the popular series of films called The Purge. While enthralling to watch, it still remains in the fiction category. But what if we were to say that there does exist a small strip of land in the United States where you could get away with any crime? If you're not a person of color, you can probably get away with it in all of the United States. But seriously, what if there was a legal loophole that made a small area a place to commit murder legally? This is the Yellowstone National Park, one of the most visited national parks in the United States. It has picturesque landscapes, wildlife, and the most famous geyser in the world called Old Faithful. However, the small area of Yellowstone counts on everyone to be faithful. This is so because the legal loophole has virtually made it a place where crime can go unpunished. To put things into perspective, it's important to understand the way in which US law is structured. The Sixth Amendment to the Constitution stated that all criminal proceedings in the US requires the presiding jury to live in both the state and the district in which the crime takes place. This makes the situation in Yellowstone National Park different since it is spread across 3 states. The majority of the park is in the state of Wyoming, with some parts in Montana and Idaho. And it is this small 50 square mile Idaho portion of the park that has been aptly nicknamed the Zone of Death. If a crime was to be committed in this area, the jurors for the trial would have to be from that district and the state. And the total population of that district in Idaho is 0. That's because Yellowstone is classified as a federal land and no one is allowed to live there. In this scenario, if a person commits a crime in the Idaho section of the park, they will be taken to Wyoming to be tried, because the District Court of Wyoming extends its jurisdiction over the entire park. However, they can demand their constitutional right and will have to be taken to Idaho for trial. Setting up the local jury will then be a huge hassle since, as pointed out earlier, the effective population of that district is 0. So technically, the defendant can claim an unfair trial and not receive any punishment. Now, before you go calling your enemies on a group vacation to Yellowstone, you might also want to hear of the lone felony case that has taken place in the Idaho section of the park. A man named Michael Belderin was arrested for shooting an elk and was put up for trial in Wyoming. He pleaded that the trial could not be held in this state, but the judge did not take note of this obscure loophole. In the end, he was sent to prison. So while there is a lack of legal precedent, you will still most likely be found guilty. Better to vent out your anger in therapy and kickboxing while enjoying Yellowstone in all its crime-free glory.